Awesome. Thank you for the intro and thanks for organizing this. I think you have heard it 200 times. I'm just going to jump right into the topic. So I will share my screen now. 1 second. Yes. Yeah. You guys can see it, right?
Yep, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So today, as a mentor, well, I want to start with this topic, like intuitive user experience, because I think in the area of Web3 that we are all in right now, we haven't talked about this like so much at all, right? Like we were talking about good user experience, like and all of this Web3 user experience, how are the differences, from the Web 2 one, but then we didn't talk so much about like how intuitive is supposed to be, or what is initially like intuitiveness in this sense. So I have like a very high level kind of the summary from my experience, that I think there are so many like factors that we could think about, but one of these that I will present you today, I think is one of like the most used and the most like important. So first, I think we can talk like quickly about what is intuitive UX design, right? So a lot of people, like there are no agreed one definition about this, but a lot of people would refer intuitive UX design to the designs which is so easy to use, that when you turn on, like open this app and you just kind of know where to go already, what to do. Okay, you want to do this, how do you achieve that? And also something that user can understand immediately. However, this does not come without a caveat, right? So a lot of people say that, okay, when you make a UX design for applications intuitive, it means that you leave only little room for experimentation, right? Because of course, if you take like the priority that user coming in and they want to be able to use it right away, so of course if you introduce new pattern of design, then it's not going to be possible, right? It's not going to be intuitive. And then I think in our like universe, Web3 universe, we kind of somewhere in between. Of course, we introduce like a novel design pattern, but on the other hand, we also want like adoption as well. We also want like a lot of people as much as possible to benefit from this everything that we actually offer, blockchain offers, right? Like immutability, transparency, and all these things. So yeah, we kind of have to juggle in between. The last point is, well, it's been in a discussion for a while with intuitive UX is a feature of design, or is just a characteristic of design. I myself leaning towards the characteristic, because I feel that to design something intuitive, it's not like a feature. Like you cannot putting it like in later, and remove it. It's not possible. It's not like features, but it's more like the characteristic of design, that since from the first that you think, okay, I'm going to design this app, I'm going to make it intuitive. Like it has to come from the very beginning. It has to be woven into this texture of how the design of your app would look like. Yeah. So there are a few laws that I will introduce to you today that I think it's really make the app more intuitive. So the first one is Fitts law. I'm sure some of you have heard already if you're kind of in this UX design nerd. So basically Fitts law is saying that the time to acquire a target is a function of the distance and size of the target, right? So basically this means that the time of to acquire the target, like in the app, let's say you want to click a button, for example, is depending on the distance and the size of the target, right? So if you read all these content ABC and then you want to take action, and let's say from that point on that you finish the content and then the action button is somewhere like I don't know where far away, well, that wouldn't fit to Fitts law. Basically, it would extend it, right? Or the size as well is also, you have to take into consideration the context. Maybe more user use your app from mobile phone, for example. And then, therefore, they're not so precise in how to act towards the target, right? Because maybe they're walking down a move, they're on the U-Bahn and so on and so forth. So you have to make the target, which is in this case the button, bigger, or the drop down, or whatever that you want to make, right? So like in a nutshell, I would say that area, distance, and size of the CTA matter. So yes. So the second law is Hick's law. Hick's law says that the time it takes to make a decision increases with the number and complexity of choices. I think you guys know this, have heard this like a million times. And yet, when we design an application, a lot of people actually didn't think about this, right? It's not that they forget about it, but I think it's not a priority for a lot of people. On the contrary, I think it's very, very important and make your UI much more intuitive, right? Because the goal of you building an app is that you want people to take like certain actions, right? And at the end, if the app provides like very good information and so on and so forth, but then people just fail to take actions, and that would raise a lot of question already. So this basically in practice, we would say that the simpler, the better, and if you cannot make it simpler than it is, right? So highlights is your best friend. So you just have to highlight it. You have to bold it. You have to make people be able to scan and dissect your content very quickly. Also, you have to design in a way that it helps minimize cognitive load, right? And this could be done in many, many ways. Like it could be, if, for example, when you do an app like onboarding for the new app, right? Let's say, this is a wallet app, and then you want someone who basically doesn't know so much about Web3 Ethereum to be able to onboard that, right? Instead of you telling them 10 steps to do in, let's say, 2 screens, maybe you can split them, right? To just make it simple and, make them to not really have to focus on this for 20 minutes, right? Maybe adding some visual, adding some visual icons whatsoever. It actually helps a lot for people to, not really just, look at this super dense text. Any questions so far? No, makes sense. Okay. So the third one is, it's ABD law, which is anything but a drop down. I mean, one can say this is depending on the test and style of the developers and the designers as well. But I would say if it's not absolutely necessary, you don't need to use a drop down, because drop down, it's really not it's not so good with mobile. Because when you do something on mobile, you don't really have so much time, you usually don't focus very much on mobile, and then having to scroll very long drop down, is one of the worst control if you would think of in terms of UX, right? We have so many controls, so we have 12, 15 controls, radio button, checkbox, just a lot of them, but drop down is something that I would use with I have reservation in terms of using drop down. But anyway, so but you may ask why is bad, even though you see it so often, is that first there are too many clicks needed, right? First you have to locate the drop down. You have to say, let's imagine if you have 3 fields of drop downs which are in date, month, and year, right? So instead of you just type things in, you just have to scroll 1 to 31 dates, right? So it's pretty long, and you have to choose it, and too many options, and sometimes it's jumping back and and whatnot. Also too many clicks, of course, too many options, and the third is hidden options, right? I mean, of course, if you're talking about drop down in a way it's months and dates is fine, but I mean there are many other drop downs that you don't even know what are the options available, and then you just have, it's kind of hiding inside, so it's not really good control. This is the sample of what I think it actually matters a lot, and people didn't really think about this. Yes, so there's so many rules. So so the time. Let's talk about your app, and I'm happy to answer your question. Yes.
Any question? Because I have one, but I want to let people get a shot.
Go for it.
All right, I'll go for it. I have a question on what do you think about mobile first, like designing, an app versus like the website. I mean, I'm more coming from, like if they're most of the time like a simplicity decision because it's like easier to develop on a browser, or other decisions that are made like that, because there's so few like mobile first wallets or mobile first, like, even blockchain, like NFT marketplaces, and that it feels like it should be more of them. So I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree because like nowadays, if it's not like just, like for work, I mostly would be on mobile, right? Because I can use it like anywhere, and it's like getting so much faster. The screen is getting bigger, and all these things. So I think mobile is, of course, is going to be the future. I mean, it's already our present. But then one insights that I have been working with a few like blockchain focused companies are that there are different type of users. When you actually see from analytics, okay, there are a lot of users coming from mobile. Like there are some platforms that, a lot of users like coming from mobile on their web application, and that was just, should we like develop a mobile app, for example, right? But then in reality, most users that come from mobile is actually coming from the ICO phase, right? So they are like investor, So for example, if you have a project and I'm going to focus on developer right now, right? So maybe it's kind of like it's a false positive, right? Like that you have people coming from mobile. You look at analytics and say like 68% from mobile, let's do a mobile app. But maybe those people are not developers. If you, like if you plan to do the developer like focus app, they are like investor. So it depends. Like I definitely pro mobile, but then the question is that which feature of the app, or what type of app that should be on mobile, because a lot of blockchain projects, most user also like entering from desktop, right? Yeah.
No, so because I mean that was a real question we were having for like NFT like art projects. So when you see like all the blockchain based marketplaces like the OpenSea, Super Rare, Non-Origin, they all started with kind of a marketplace like on a browser, and like a straight up website, and it's, I guess it's not so much like a problem that's specific to blockchain dApps, because even now with like the amount of like websites and things that are going up online, it feels like like a mobile first experience, especially for these NFT marketplaces, would make so much more sense to like have like push notifications, and again, like this is not super technical people that like are the users. I mean, they still need to have a wallet and be connected, but there was really just one experiment that was done, and that was very well done, which it was called Additional, and they kind of died in the crypto winter because they don't quite have a business model. But the way they were doing it with push notification, like everybody was really active. Like I would respond to every push notification on that site, when I would totally forget to go on like the other like web based marketplaces. So
Lili, can I ask you to stop sharing your screen so that we can
okay,
instead
yes.
of your slide?
Yes, 1 second.
That's
Can I? Is it like kind of cancel it, or is
what? Everything's good now.
It's good now. Okay.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, awesome.
What I was going to say is it's an interesting one because, like you were saying, it depends on the users. But for instance, without a mobile wallet at that cleanup in the Philippines, we wouldn't have been able to onboard people. And also, if you think of the ability to, but on the flip side, something like education, you can't really do on mobile. You kind of want that desktop environment for a workshop or a discussion and things like that. there's arguments for both sides, but I would say that one of the things that we were thinking about at one point, and this is very relevant with people, right? I can just take my phone out and create a piece of content without needing to be in front of my laptop. But one of the things
turn your camera on, please, Simona, because you're talking.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Sorry, that's what I'm here for.
So,
director, yeah.
So, and that was one of the really interesting things that we were going to do with bounties, to have those push notifications where actually, depending on where you were, based on your skill set, you would get notifications that there's bounties happening around you that you could tap into. So yeah, it does definitely depend on the audience.
I have push notifications turned off on everything.
Everything, yeah.
Me too.
Everything.
100%.
I'm very connected, but push notifications are just for me like an absolute hell. Yeah.
Yeah, true. I think fellow Spencer want to say something. Fellow Spencer.
Oh, I was just agreeing on push notifications, but I did have my hand raised for a while to ask you if you could explain Fitts law again, because I missed that.
Okay, Fitts law. Yeah, so Fitts law is basically the law that say that when you design, all these CTA, either like the inputs or like, buttons and so on and so forth, you should also think about how big it is, how far it is, so that in the sense that how long it is for the user to be able to acquire that. Right. So basically, Fitts law, it says that the time to acquire a target is a function to the distance and the size of the target. So like basically the time to, complete the CTA, it's actually depending directly on the distance of the CTA and also the size of the CTA. But then the size of the CTA is something like, it's actually depending on the context, right? Like I mentioned earlier, if it's mobile, you need to make buttons like big. You need to make CTA input whatsoever like big, because people don't really have, like precision, and they like have a small screen and so on and so forth. But on desktop, you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't do like a huge CTA. But on the desktop, you should also maybe think more about like the region of the CTA, for example. If you have the informations of this action, then you should also put the CTA like really right next to it. But right next to it, what does it mean? Like, does it mean like below or above? It also depends on.
It means where my thumb is on a mobile.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, that's a pretty key one. This is a gut feeling as a designer,
Yeah. And there's like also a debate between Android designer and like iPhone designer, because iPhone designer is something like that, like when you have two buttons together, like cancel and yes to something, like yes and no, basically. So you would have yes on the right side, I think, and then no on the left. But then for Android, you will have yes on the left and no on the right, because Android would say that yes should come first, because when you read, right, like as according to like Western like alphabet, you read from left to right. So the first thing should come from the left. But then I think Apple say that like this thing is closer to your thumb. I mean, this is like
it's like Apple's. It's the Apple versus the Microsoft mentality. I mean, I can't use any Microsoft products myself. Because I've been on Apple since 1983. But can I ask you then your professional opinion about the implementation of your design in Interspace?
Oh, okay. I actually didn't implement that. I designed this blobs, right? I have to say that I like it. This is so ridiculous.
So let's talk about that in an implementation. So you just basically made a brand identity, and we implemented it in the idea of Interspace. What are your criticisms or your approval of the user experience of Interspace?
Okay, user experience with Interspace. I really like it. I really like it for like a few reasons. Like first is that I think it's very, very simple. And then that is what we need most of the time today, right? It's basically you come onto this landing page, I would say for a certain event, and then you have like you know exactly where you want to go in one place, and I think it's awesome. And a lot of
share
applications that.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna share my screen now so people can see it. Okay?
Yes.
At the same time.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Cool. I think it's simple. It's very cool. If I would have one comment, it would be that
I hope you have more than one. Come on, man. You're like you're
I would perhaps because one of each like blob stands for like the room, right? Or the track. I would probably put a text on top. Yeah. So the text now only appears when you hover on top, which I understand because it just makes all these things like aesthetically more appealing. But I would put the text already before hover, so then people don't have to hover around and see what it is. And that's it. That's it.
Then let me share my screen. Let me call it up first. I hope I got this URL right. Hang on a second. Yeah. This is bad. I'm an idiot. Good. So I will share my screen, and it's in a different browser. So this is the design for the Solidity Summit for Interspace. Oops. No, that's not it. Here we go. So actually, we did that on Solidity Summit.
Well, yeah, this is perfect. This is this is cool. Yeah. Oh wow, this is all these like glitches, like amazing.
Yeah, SVG glitch is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here we go. Also about action notifications. So another thing that we did is to use system notifications, browser notifications instead of pop-ups. Do you have an opinion about that in terms of usability?
You mean like you use like in-browser notification or pop-up?
Yeah.
Right?
What is your opinion about in-browser notification or system-level notification styling versus branded styling?
Yeah, I think in-browser notification is actually pretty good. Because usually like people have different platform and software and whatever, right? But I mean, if the type of notification that you have is the standard of the browsers, I think you already fixed like a lot of problems already. Because there are like, if you would, for example, there are also companies which is like providing notification API, right? And then you can basically like customize a lot and so on, which is fine, which is also cool, right? If you could customize a lot of stuff, but you also need to look into those details, okay, whether accessibility is already there or not, because maybe some people like they, for example, browsing the website or the app using tab, for example, or those hard of hearings, they require the voice interface, and if you use the thing that is already like the standard of the browsers, they already have that
accessibility and usability standards, W3 on website stuff.
Totally. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I think it's very important.
Thing that many designers don't actually consider, and particularly app designers, right? Is the accessibility guidelines.
Yes. And I mean, there are like so many things, so many tiny small things, right? For example, this is not really related to notification, but I just want to give one short example. Was, for example, when we build the website, when you like go into HTML tag, right? They are like the specific tag, like H1 tag, whatever, right? And most of the time nowadays, because we have such a super fancy button, when you code button in HTML, you just use div, for example. You just use div tag for button because it's much easier to style. And this is actually very bad practice. You definitely have to use button tag for all buttons on the website, because if you use div tag, for someone who, let's say, have not so good eyesight and they really want to navigate using tab will skip the div tag. It will not. Yeah, so that person will never ever get to the CTA. For example, I mean, it's a tiny small thing, but these are the things that people should also think more.
Well, I guess what we could say is that there's a huge crop of people now that are coming into application design that are not necessarily coming from web standard design, where all of those things matter, right?
Yeah. It's an occupation which has a low barrier to entry. So I think that's it. I mean, it's the beauty of it, but I think it's also to be like maybe like an okay designer is also worth to take some few days to actually like go into this and see what you can do. I think that would make a difference.
So here I got another question for you. Okay, so I'm like really curious about your path. Where did you start in design actually? And because I know where you are now, super present in our community. But where did you start in design? Was it print or was it web or where?
Yeah. So first, I actually started. So I did like a master design degree in London, and I was then focused on production. So I was basically in advertising. Before I was in production house, like basically those companies which like produce like a film.
Make money as an artist, advertising.
Yeah, advertising is so shit. Yeah, but then first I was in a production company. So I was the first AD, is the first assistant director. So I was like the one with speakers running around. Everyone got really annoyed with me. That kind of person. And then after that, I moved to advertising agency, and I was a creative. I was an art director, and then I was focused more on the prints, on prints and TVC. So there are two main things. And after that, I got really tired of advertising world, selling shampoos.
I had an agency with 40 employees. So.
Oh gosh, like my account was Unilever, so I mean what the products they have, and it's just like
I had accounts like that too.
It's something like that.
That's why it is that I have all these beautiful gardens that everybody pays attention to on Twitter. Is that I sold the agency and literally moved into a farmhouse with my cat for 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So.
Oh gosh, I envy you.
No, yes, that was quite many years ago. So, what do you think are the primary skill sets for being an online website or application developer that people need to have? What are the three toolboxes or skill sets that?
Okay. So first, I think it's as a designer, it's important that you take do everything with focus on users. I think first is very important, right? Because if you let's say building a portfolio site for yourself, it's kind of it's for yourself as well, right? But if you being hired to design an app and so on, I think you have to be able to, you have to have sympathy, right? You have to understand users. You have to have an urge of okay, if I don't know anything, then I maybe should ask user, and how should I do this? Should I just, conduct a survey or just having face-to-face interview? So first, I think it's important to be able to think of user first, to be able to have sympathy to those people who are going to use, affect by your design first. Second, I think it's kind of important that you be able to use all the tools coming in and frameworks, know what it is like, especially if you're freelance. I know this is kind of sounds like, oh, this is like a surface thing, right? But I think it's very important because nowadays, also in design, there are many new frameworks, many new tools coming out all the time. And, you need to be able to understand where is your position at this, right? I mean, you need to, if there are nice tools and good framework that fit into your project, it would be beneficial for you to be able to use that, with a very little onboarding time. And third, I think third is very debatable, but I think you should be able to at least to code a little bit, to be able to code a little bit. At least I mean if your design is focused on applications, if you're doing something that you have to hand over to developers, you need to kind of like understand at least, okay, minimum, you need to understand what would be an impact, you know, for a developer receiving whatever you hand over, let's say, right? And I think
that was a follow-up question there. So the need for code. Where did you get that as part of your education, or did you have to learn by doing?
I learned all by myself. Yeah, so I just learned it. I just think it's like, first it started off as I was very curious about it, right? Because I just design, and you know, it's very static kind of process, and I wanted to get into interaction design, and of course you need to be able to code a little bit, and I just, you know, here and there, and I think it's, and once I can kind of do it, and then I think it's really important. I think every designer like should be able to do it. It's not that difficult. I think just spend some time, to learn.
So here's another one of those elephants in the room. Do you design for yourself? Because you're talking about having empathy and sympathy for users. How many designers do you think design for themselves, and how many people, or how do you get over not designing? I know that I design for myself.
That's almost a therapy question.
No, it's really a professional. It's really a professional question, like stepping out of yourself. I think so.
Yeah. No, I think that it's true. It's very difficult, like especially as a designer, right? Because a lot of times people want to work with you because maybe they share your aesthetic, right? Because maybe they like your style, apart from the fact that, okay, you like, you know, did those and here, and they like the usability part. But I think it's very difficult to separate. And therefore, that's why I said that we have to somehow, you know, you somehow in the workflow, and then you kind of have to stop to think. Like I also have to do it many times. Okay, is this the thing that people actually, you know, going to be the best for people who are using it or not? And to answer actually the question, I design for myself. I think I have two points on this. So design for myself is, you know, in the process of design, right? I design, and then I see like the outcome, and then I like the style, I like how it looks, I like how it moves around. And this is one thing. And the second, even though at the end of the process, it may not be, okay, I may do something different, but I end up doing something that I think is better for user, I still enjoy the process of design. Like something that, like simple tasks well done, right? When you do a knitting work, you know, before you finish the knitting work, you know, you have this time like that you kind of repeat like this process, and then somehow for me it feels very satisfying.
So design's more of a process for you, or are you a person that actually like builds a wireframe and has a structure and fleshes it out, or are you more like me, where I start at one point and end up somewhere which I recognize is better by trial and error, that doesn't necessarily incorporate my original vision? Where are you on that spectrum?
I think it's the combination of both, though. I think it's a combination of both. I think it's definitely when I work on a very tight deadlines with companies, I need to be able to tell them, okay, these are my process, right? So then they can follow up. Okay, so what is it? Do we need this here and there and the next one? So they can prepare the materials. I think it's very important. But on the other hand, I also like maybe more similar to you in that sense that, you know, I start somewhere, but at the end, if I found my initial thought is not, you know, the most optimal choice to go, I'm also happy to just, you know, redo the whole thing and, you know, like kind of end up somewhere totally different. I think it's a mixture of both, but yeah.
So another one from advertising experience, how many choices do you offer a client?
I think like the amazing choices. 3 choices. But
and
the question
is, choose the worst one, right?
Yeah, and they usually come back with the one that they like, you know, proposed. But yeah, I mean, that was many years ago that I offer like 3 choices. Nowadays, I offer most of the time 2 choices at the beginning, and then later we work together to improve that, you know, that direction. Some of my friends nowadays, they're like, no, we don't do pitches. We don't give choices. It's like, I think it's becoming more of instead of, you know, like designers creative like pitching for, hey, can you select this, right? We more like wanted to make this more holistic in a way that is more in a way that, okay, we really want to understand what you want, and we work together to make it, the best as we can.
In Austria, when I was doing advertising in Austria, you got paid for pitches. And then I in 2002, as a creative director in an advertising agency there. And they were doing pitches, and I was like, and then they're doing revisions. I'm like, you guys are charging for the revisions, right? And on the pitches, and they're like, what? We don't even charge for the pitch. And I was
my God.
What?
No free pitches. No free pitches.
I had a question on actually on your different experiences. So you worked in advertising and non-blockchain design world and blockchain like Dapps and kind of wanted to ask you about like specificities of what you've seen like being different in blockchain, in good or bad, I guess.
Yeah, I think definitely is more room for experimentation. People here are, there are also different target groups, like because most users of like blockchain based apps are crypto native, I would say at this stage, most of them. And so they have more open mind, they have like room for errors that allow a higher margin of errors. And, of course it comes with experiment, right? If you experiment with something, you're trying to introduce something new, we're not gonna get it first the first time. Yeah. So I think it's more like creativity, more room to experiment, and definitely yeah.
No, it's interesting. We're do you know Matt Condon and AJ Adams?
Oh, yeah.
So at East Berlin last summer, they did a project called Dot Gallery, which was a new way to show digital art online. And with everything that's happening with the art market and COVID-19, like they kind of put it back on the table, and we're developing the interface further with them to make a digital art fair happening in June.
Oh, wow.
So this is not blockchain based, so it doesn't have like so much of the token aspect and everything, but it's definitely a new way to show art, and not only digital. Actually, it can be any type of art online, and trying to like do something different, but for a very conservative audience.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I mean, it's also like challenging because they had a prototype right at East Berlin, but we're pretty much finalizing the product with them and the platform, and so we have 2 months pretty much to do that. And it's kind of, where do you put the line of like introducing new ways to navigate that are cleaner, that are more like online native, that is not like just a stupid bench in front of an artwork, like to show the scale, and just scrolling through artworks, but and where do you draw the line of like, this needs to stop because it's too much or it's not enough. And we're doing a lot of user testings, obviously, that's like to get answers, but there's so many different actors in the art market, from like people who are like, I don't know where my mouse is on my computer, like, I don't know what an arrow key is, and people were like, okay, experimenting. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be at the end of June, and they're working their ass off to do that. But it's a fun use case where we took something that was like blockchain based and like trying to like massage it to make it like a broader product, and they've been great about it and quite amazing. And on UX UI for that. So
Wow.
it's gonna be stay tuned.
Yeah. Super cool. Is it this one dot gallery?
So it's gonna be on CADAF. It's contemporary and digital art fair.art. So it's CADAF.art, and but their website doesn't have anything yet. It's but it's still called like .dot an actual dot gallery as the domain. And
oh my God, looking forward. I have to check it out.
Yeah, no, we can do a UX UI session on that one specifically. But,
yeah, no, totally, it'd be cool. I actually have a question for you guys. Is it okay? Do I have to like ask for you? I want to ask how is it happening in this COVID pandemic time? I just want to know because we all don't live in the same city and so on.
What's the question?
No, sorry.
What's your question?
I know my question is like, how are you guys doing in this pandemic time?
I'm doing great. My life hasn't changed at all, man. I've been preparing for this Weltuntergang for since I came back from Turkey. You know, I basically those 3 years I learned to grow my own food and was working over a 3G connection as the system administrator for the Bitcoin Foundation. I've been native crypto since 2013, and you know I sit in a basement in a hackerspace with my laptop, and then I spend the time in my garden. I'm electrified by what's going on.
Oh my God.
Really, no, I really am, because I've literally been in the Bitcoin and Ethereum space for building all of these the freedom to transact, whether it's informationally or financially, with governance systems. I've just been running for 10 years, basically building and helping to people build the systems that are hopefully there as old paradigms collapse. I'm absolutely electrified, and now doing Interspace and providing this sort of virtual environment where we can act with each other. I'm doing great. Really. And look, we're talking, we're doing things, all of us. I'm in a community of people that are not taking things lying down. We're, everybody that we're involved with are building and looking forward and not satisfied with the old normal. And I just feel like this is our moment. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. I have to say, I also share partly of that feeling that, okay, this is like kind of, I mean, it's sad in many ways, but there are also like new challenge, right? Which also arises at the same time, new opportunities, or, like how like and human like race are just,
I feel like welcome to reality. You know what I mean? Welcome to the reality of where we're at on the planet.
Yeah.
COVID is like, this thing, as far as I'm concerned, it's going to burn out in 6 to 8 months, and then we'll have the recurring things. There's no way that society can stay stopped the way that it is.
True.
There's no way that surveillance capitalism is going to survive it. People are already, dissatisfied with privacy issues on Facebook. You look at what happens with Zoom. Everybody shifts over to Zoom, and then everybody's going, Facebook, my data. Zoom is changing. The world is radically changing under our feet, and it's a good thing. COVID is minor in comparison to global warming. How many organisms are there in the ice that's melting that we have yet to deal with that are coming out? I mean, this is like I love the paradigm shift that took us out of the 9/11 world. We've been living in this, terrorism, money laundering, bullshit sort of thing for almost 20 years now. I mean, this is like this is the same level of paradigm shift, which is a wake-up call to actually what is important. And what it is that I see in Austria here is just people like on the opposite side of the political spectrum where I live. Yeah. So right wing, they have the same concerns. They're like, this can't keep going on the way it has been. What are we going to do? I think that the shutdown has been an absolutely wonderful thing for people to actually analyze what's important to them and what they want from their governments, what they want from their monetary systems. And I don't feel like it's a nerd thing that's only happening in our circles. I see it happening in the broader scope of mainstream media, and in the average person on the street is talking about things that I've been screaming about for 20 years. It feels great.
Yeah. No, totally. I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with one point that I think this situation has it has forced me to focus and, you know, kind of really like define for myself what matters. Like who matters, what matters, you know, like and all of
Yes.
those fat are, you know,
matters to you? Who matters to you now? Really share that with us.
Yeah.
Really. What are the things, the conclusions or the actionables, or what are the value shifts that have happened for you?
Yeah, like I think of course like close families members are like super important. Like it just, you know, because I don't live in the same country as my parents for many years now, and you know, I also talk to them quite often, but not that often enough. But during this time, and you know, my aunt and everything, it just, I think the relatives are like super important. And also like longtime friends from high school, you know, which is sometimes like it's a kind of people that we don't meet on a daily basis because we live in a different place. But then once we kind of meet, you know, let's say once a year, you know, we can kind of like catch up super quickly. Like that, you know, it's also a kind, I'm totally neglected. Like I, like, you know, and then I kind of refreshed, I don't know how to say it, like the relationship over this. Some of them also reach out to me, and you know, it feels like kind of nice. And also of course like new friendship, you know, like all this, you guys crypto people. It just, because I mean like we just either have to chat or like call or talk like every day. I have to like, you know, so I feel also this is kind of my new like community, like family somehow, you know, like because, you know, like us, I think we've seen each other in so many events and in real life and whatnot, you know, like it just, it's so cool. Yeah.
But it's also like, you know, like making a bit more sense of like what is sustainable and what is not in terms of even traveling for us, right? Like, because I feel like in the crypto space, as much as we love all the events, is it like really rational to like all travel to, you know, like to Japan, like for a conference, like when people might not be able to, or yes, it's great and it's fun, but same thing with like the art market and art fairs. You know, some people were traveling to like 70 events per year. Like this is the only thing they were doing, literally. So I think that puts that back in context, being like, okay, well, what if you can't? Like, and
so I'm involved with the dog fooding group for DevCon, and one of the interesting things that's happening right now is that in integrating Pope tokens for DevCon. Actually, Lili is like going, I don't want any physical Pope tokens for environmental reasons. We don't need any T-shirts. You know, everybody has enough T-shirts. There's like literally that sort of mentality that's this, you know, this consumerist or materialist sensibility. People are feeling much more empowered to actually manifest those things as a result of this, you know, of the travel bans.
But I think we have to also realize that we're lucky enough to like be able to work, you know, on projects while this is happening, and this is something that I'm like thankful every day. But it's also, you know, like some people are like, oh, now I have time to read books and like
no, we don't.
Lego. And I'm like, I've never been as busy as I feel now. So, but it shows like, you know, like what you can make of a situation. And I'm so happy that actually I had 3 events planned like this spring, and they all went virtual and pretty much are happening at the same or almost the same dates as they were planned physically. So it's good to see the resilience of people, you know, and
yeah, that's the thing. Is it to come back to what Lili was saying about what's important is, I think the one thing that's always motivated me through all of the different things that I've done in my life has been the people. Yeah, it's always been about the people that I could work with, and what it is that we were doing was secondary to the working relationship and the motivations of the people that I associate with. And so that's a core thing. Definitely is people always. Yeah.
Totally. And Simona, how are you doing? She's still here.
Oh shit, she's probably making coffee or something. Man.
I'm here. I had to I had to find the window amongst all of the other tabs.
Community
good.
people queen.
Right. I think the main thing, and I've said this before, I definitely think this push to virtual is a good thing for us all, because it is forcing us to look at all of the different, again, paths to access in a virtual setting. Like, why would you need to physically be there, right? This is all about distributed access. This is all about easier access. This is all about, it's for everyone, not just the people who can afford to travel to XYZ location. And so I think from that perspective, and even things like virtual events, right? A lot of these technologies and a lot of the platforms that we use are not set up for an interactive dynamic or a networking boosting dynamic, which I think, again, is something that we need to sort out, like all of the things with Zoom and privacy and the fact that it's, the connection to it. Like, I've been having huge problems with Zoom in terms of connection, because everywhere around me, my bandwidth has practically been halved because everybody around me is home.
Yeah.
Let's face it, Interspace does a lot better job at connectivity than Zoom does.
Your comments this morning or last night, in the Community of Communities Telegram group, where people are asking about, Zoom permissions and stuff, And I just thought, okay, I'm just not even going to talk about Interspace there, because we've solved a lot of those issues and people will find out about it or not,
But these are things that now potentially we are being pushed to solve a lot quicker and to solve a lot better than, the physical, being able to constantly physically interact was making us a little bit lazier.
Yeah.
All of these things, or figuring out, how about we funnel people in, or we work on adoption through other ways rather than just organizing physical events.
Yeah. It also brings out like creativity, like in terms of because this is a necessity to do this now, and it's
need is the best teacher, like 100%.
Totally.
So for me, I think somehow though I'm working even more than before. I didn't think this was possible, but here we are, and I think it's just because I'm like prison. There's no, I'm just traveling for a couple of days. It's like, no, we know you're not. You're definitely there. So
there's no excuse. There's no excuse anymore.
There's no escape. Yeah.
I have a great picture of us from East Berlin that actually popped up in my phone when I was looking for something that I got to send to you.
Oh, really? Yes.
The last time that we saw each other. Yeah, I got to send you that picture because it's a good one.
Do it. Okay.
Cool. Great. Thanks so much for joining us, Lili. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Actually, I don't think you're part of the Discord, like from ETHTurin yet, because someone asked, if you can send me your slides. Someone asked for the slides there.
Okay.
So, or whatever is easier.
Yes, I will do it. How to join the Discord again?
I'll send you the invite in Telegram.
The link in the Interspace Discord that you've already joined.
Yes.
So you can post it there, and then and then Fanny can find you in the Interspace Discord and send you an invite to the ETHTurin
awesome
Discord.
Yes.
So, Fanny?
Many ways.
Cool.
Yeah. Wait, and I send you a wrong thing. I send you.
I was like, what?
Oh my god.
Fractured channels, man. Unbelievable. That's another thing. How many message clients do you guys have?
Oh my god.
Oh god. Let's not even go there.
Oh god. But I don't get TikTok. Okay, do you get TikTok? I mean, I don't really get it. Like, I try.
No, Pan gets it, but I don't get it.
I don't get it. I mean, I kind of like. I mean, it's like entertaining for a while, but then it's just so annoying because everyone is talking all the time and doing like this extra like stuff. I don't know. I just have to try. Maybe I'm just old. So I'm just like, wow. It's just like,
Well, welcome to community media, man. Everybody has a voice. We dreamed of this stuff, 20 years ago. I did everything I could to make it happen, and now that it's here, it's just like, okay, a lot of flotsam and jetsam that I don't really need.
okay.
Generational thing.
It will.
No,
Yeah, it will always come with a fluff.
Absolutely.
All right. Great. So we're
Next,
getting to our last. Yeah. Good.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I will share it there. Let's move.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
So next we have the last mentor for the mentoring today, and it's about COVID-19 response. So do you want Michael to introduce?
Yeah, I don't see him here yet, but let me message him again on Keybase.